Today we're going to write some music, and it's going to be related to our study of key signatures, which we've been working on for a few weeks. You should have a piece of staff paper from the substitute. Go ahead and write your name in the top right corner. You write your first and last name, so I'm able to see whose is whose. This does count as a grade today, so you need to make sure you try your best, okay, to get all the assignments for this page done. So write your first and last name, and then make sure you put your class period, either 6A or 6B if you're in the brass class. Okay, right next to that. And we're going to start with a little review of clefs. So we're going to be writing in both treble and bass clef. So you need to kind of understand how each of those clefs work as far as reading notes. So let's start with treble clef first. So as a little review, let's go ahead and draw a treble clef. Your first step for drawing a treble clef is you're going to draw a line that goes from above the top line to a little bit below the bottom line. And then the next step is you start on the top. You're going to curl to the right. And then you're going to curl over to the left. And then back around again. And then loop around that second line. So the second line of the staff, that's why we call it the G clef. So treble or G clef. Go ahead and label that as well. As far as our lines and spaces go, we can use some of our sayings to help us out. For spaces, face, so the word F-A-C-E can help us out with which note is what as far as the spaces go. And then for the lines, there's lots of different sayings, okay, but the lines are going to be E, G, B, D, and F. And you can think every good boy deserves fudge, or Elvis's guitar broke down Friday. Every good burger deserves fries. Whichever one of the sayings works easiest for you, the one that you're going to remember the most. So it's really important that we remember these notes, because we're going to use them in just a little bit when we write some of our key signatures down. All right, so that's for treble clef. Bass clef are other clefs. Some of you read in bass clef, but it's important that we all understand how to read some of those notes. Bass clef looks like that. So first step, you just draw that little dot. And you probably want to make sure your pencil is really sharp for this, because it's kind of difficult to draw if you have a dull pencil. So draw that dot on the fourth line of the staff, and then you loop around to form that backwards looking C. And then your two dots go around that line that we drew the big dot on earlier. And that's our bass clef, which is also known as the F clef. And as a review for that one, our lines and spaces are completely different. None of them have the same answers as treble clef. So our lines are grizzly, bears, don't, fly, airplanes. And our spaces are all cows eat grass. So spaces are A, C, E, and then G. And then our lines are G, B, D, F, and then A. And we're going to use this in just a little bit too, so we want to make sure that those notes are labeled, just so it's really easy when we get to the key signature part. You know exactly what you're going to write as far as a line or a space, sharp or flat. The next thing we want to review is our what's called accidentals. So let's label that first. You can kind of think of accidentals might be something where if you see this note in your music, it could be something where we tend to make an accident. We tend to mess up on this when it comes to a sharp or a flat or a natural. So we're going to label each of these. I'm not going to draw a clef for this one, because it doesn't really matter what clef we're in. We're just going to draw a line that's in the middle, a note that's right in the middle of the staff, like this, and we'll put the stem upside down since it's kind of at that halfway point. The first one we're going to label is going to be a flat. So to the side of it, you're going to make that little, kind of that smushed B looking thing, and let's label that as a flat. Okay. The next one we're going to label, we'll draw that same note in the middle of the staff. Just draw it as a quarter note. Doesn't really matter if it's a quarter note or a half note. We're going to label that one as a sharp, and the sharp is the one that kind of looks like a hashtag. Make sure that the center of the hashtag symbol is like right on the line, so you should be able to tell it's right on the line in the middle. And then let's label that as a sharp. And then the last one we're going to draw is a natural, so draw that same note in the middle of the staff, stem pointing down since we're halfway. And we're going to label that one as a natural. This one kind of looks like an L and then a 7 kind of combined together. So we're going to label that same thing right next to the note. And we'll label that as a natural. If you remember, the purpose, the reason that we use the natural is to cancel one of those. Right? So usually if we see a note that just kind of looks like this by itself, and there's no flats and no sharps in our key signature, and there's nothing written next to the note, that note is also natural, but we use this symbol right here to cancel if it's sharp or flat. Another important thing to remember about accidentals, let's draw a few notes here. So just draw a bar line after the notes you just drew. And we're going to just draw some quarter notes that go up and down, right? So let's start with the first space. And then we're going to draw a sharp next to that note. Right? And then we're going to go up one note. And then we'll go up another note. Make sure your pencil is sharp for this part. And then we're going to go back down to the first note that we played in the measure. And then we'll close the measure with a bar line. Now, remember, accidental is really, really important rule that we have to remember in music. If you have an accidental at the beginning of the measure, it lasts for the whole measure. So this note right here is still sharp. So label that just like you see on my page. The same thing applies if I do a flat or a natural in the measure. So let's draw an example of a flat next. Okay, we're going to make these notes with the stem pointing down. So we'll start in the middle line. We'll draw them as quarter notes as well. And then the next we'll go up one note, stem pointing down, and then we'll go up another note, and then we'll draw the same thing as the first note. So we'll go back to that first note we did in the measure, and then we'll close the measure with a bar line. And then let's label the first note as a flat. Draw a flat sign next to that first note. So same thing applies here. If we have a flat towards the beginning of the measure, it'll last all the way till the end of the measure. So this note right here is still flat. The accidental doesn't always have to be at the beginning of the measure. It could be maybe on the second note, and then if that note were to reappear later in the measure, that would still be sharp or flat. Right? If you're confused so far, what I would suggest is rewind the video a little bit and go back to when we first started talking about these and see if you can kind of catch up again, right? It's not really new information. This is just, should be all review. This is one of those like unwritten rules in music you have to memorize. The flat, sharp, or natural at the beginning of the measure lasts for the whole measure. Just an unwritten rule that we have to remember as we do some of our key signature stuff. So next we're going to draw some key signatures. And what I want you to do is you're going to draw a grand staff. So a grand staff is made up of treble and bass clef. So our first step is to connect two of these staves together by drawing kind of a really long, almost like a bar line. And so that means that we're going to read this as a unit. We're not going to read the top line and then the bottom line. We're going to read both lines at the same time. If you've ever played piano, piano players have to read both clefs at the same time, and one of their hands plays that one, and then the other hand plays that one. So they play multiple notes to create chords and harmony. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to label a little bracket like that to connect them together. That also shows us that we're going to be playing both of these at the same time. And then on the top staff, we're going to draw a treble clef, and on the bottom staff, we're going to draw a bass clef. So let's see if you remember how to do that. So treble clef on the top, and then a bass clef on the bottom. Now remember, a lot of companies that write music, they're all about saving money or saving ink or just making it as cheap as possible. We know a lot of people are just cheap when it comes to that. It saves money, their business can grow, they don't have to pay as much money to print music because they don't have to use as much ink. So shortcut that we use, okay, is by putting a key signature at the beginning of the music, and it lasts for the whole thing. So we're going to draw some key signatures in just a second, right? The key signature is going to be located between the clef and the time signature. So leave a little blank area right here, okay? And let's go ahead and draw a 3/4 time signature to the side of both clefs. Remember, for 3/4, we don't put a line in the middle. It's not really a fraction, so we don't put a line in the middle. We just draw a 3 on top of a 4. So the key signature is going to be a list of flats or sharps that we're going to use in the piece of music, right? You can have up to 7 sharps. So we'll draw the 7 sharp and 7 flat key signatures in a little bit. Okay, but we're going to start simple first with just a few, right? There's never going to be a mix of flats and sharps. It's going to be one or the other when we draw this in our part. So let's label some flats first. We're going to draw 3 flats in our key signature, and our flats are going to be B, E, and A. So B flat, E flat, and A flat are going to be our 3 flats for this key signature. So treble clef, the B that we're going to use is going to be this one right here, okay, in the center. So we're going to draw a flat sign directly on that line. Okay, you should see the line going through the middle of the flat. If you don't see the line going through the middle of the flat, then you probably want to erase it and redraw it. It's got to be really clear. You should be able to tell exactly which note you're asking the musician to play when you write it. The next flat we're going to draw in is going to be the E, so we're going to go exactly in that order with B, E, A. So E, we're going to use this E way up here. Just makes it a little cleaner, and we form a little bit of a pattern when we draw flats in both clefs. So E, we're going to draw that on the space, the top space. So draw a flat sign on the E space. And then the last flat we're going to draw is our A flat. And there's only one A flat within the clef, within the staff, sorry. So we're going to draw an A flat right here on the second space. Right, so hopefully you've seen this before. We did this a little bit with our challenge before spring break. We've been talking about some key signatures for a while, okay, but that's kind of a key signature we've seen and talked about before. Let's draw the same thing in bass clef now. When we draw in bass clef, it is not going to look exactly the same as this. A lot of the notes in bass clef are going to go down like one line or down one space. So if we're going to label a B first, okay, we're going to use this line right here to label the B. And then we're going to do the same thing. The E that we're going to use is going to be the third space. We're going to draw a flat sign on the third space. And then for the last one, the A flat, we're going to use the bottom space. Right, so you should have 3 flats. They kind of form the same pattern. We go like low, high, and then low. In both clefs, low, high, and then low. And as we continue drawing flats in treble and bass clef, you'll see the same thing going on. One really important thing to remember, okay, when we draw a key signature like this, okay, is all B's, E's, and A's are flat. Okay, so go ahead and write that underneath or in between the 2 parts of the grand staff. all B's, E's, and A's are flat. So that means if we play a super, super high B way up here, or if I play a B that's located right here, that kind of lines up with that flat I drew, or if I play a B way down here, okay, that's a B flat, that's a B flat, and that's a B flat. There's a really big difference between B flat and B natural, as we talked about. For some people, you're going to use a completely different fingering. Okay, for trombones especially, they'll go from their slide all the way in to their slide all the way out to play a B flat and a B natural. So it's really important that we kind of do that. Same thing in bass clef. If I were to draw a B here, or a B here, or even a B that the tubas see way down here, all those are going to be B flat. So I draw it once in my key signature, and it counts for every single one of those notes throughout the whole piece. Now, off to the side, let's go ahead and write this. This is another, I don't want to say unspoken rule, but this is another trick you can use when it comes to flats. The order of flats. So copy this down with me, the order of flats. And this is for a key signature. We're always going to label from left to right, okay, using this order, and that's the B, E, A, D, G, C, F. So it spells bead, G, C, F. That's only for the order of flats. So if I have 3 flats in my key signature, the answer should be B, E, and A. Those notes are all flat, which is true right here, B, E, and A. We just drew those earlier. If I have 4 flats in my key signature, I would say B, E, A, and D are going to be flat. Or if I have 7 flats in my key signature, B, E, A, D, G, C, F, I'm going to go exactly in that order, right? The next thing we're going to draw is going to be some sharp key signatures. So let's draw a grand staff again. You're going to connect the 2 staves together with that line. And then you're going to draw the bracket next. And then you're going to label your 2 clefs. There's your treble clef and your bass clef. And then we're going to label a time signature. You can choose if you want to use 3/4 again. You can try a 4/4. You can try a 2/4 time signature. You can even try a common time signature where you draw a C in there. Or if you want to even draw something like 6/8. Okay, I'll let you choose for this one. So you're going to draw that time signature just to leave a blank area right here, and then draw your time signature to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and label C for common time. And we're going to do that on both the treble and the bass staves. Now, before we draw our sharps, we're going to go ahead and label the order of sharps right here. So copy this with me, order of sharps. And the order of sharps is going to be backwards from the order of flats. So we're going to start with F first, and then we're going to go this way. So F, and then C, and then G, and then ending with B. So our first one is going to be F, C, G, and if you keep reading it backwards, D, A, E, and then B is last. So backwards order. And then remember, the sharp is a hashtag symbol, so kind of like that. When you draw the hashtag symbol, you want the very, very center of the sharp to be either on a line or a space. You got to be able to tell that you're drawing it really clearly, where you can tell if it's on a line or a space. We're going to draw a key signature here that has 3 sharps in it. So our sharps are going to be those 3 right there. We're always going to go in order. So 1, 2, and then 3, F, C, and then G. Let's start with our treble clef staff first. We're going to use the F at the top of the staff right here, okay, for our key signature. So F sharp, the top of the staff. And then the next one we're going to draw is going to be a C, and there's only one C that exists within the staff, which is right here. And then the G is a little tricky in treble clef. We're going to draw a G that's on top of the staff, so it would be that note right there. We're going to draw a G that would be kind of next to that note, if you imagine that's drawn. So on top of the top line. The first sharp is on the line. The last sharp is on top of the line. So make sure you see a distinction between the two when you draw it. And then we'll do the same thing in bass clef. Remember, we're not going to draw on the same line or space in bass clef. So the first sharp we're going to draw is going to be right here on this line. So it's on the fourth line. And then we're going to draw a sharp, and it's going to be on the second space. And then we're going to draw one more sharp, which is on the top space. So not on top of the staff, but right on the top space. And this key signature means all F's, C's, and G's are sharp. So copy that down. All F's, C's, and G's are sharp. So no matter how high or how low I draw the note, okay, any F anywhere on the staffs are going to be sharp. Any C that I draw is going to be sharp, or any G that I draw is going to be sharp. Now, this sounds kind of complicated. The biggest thing we need to know is when we play our instruments, when we see one of these sharps or flats, is we have to use a different fingering. So a different fingering is going to come with that. Right? So we're going to do this video in 2 parts. That's going to be the end of part 1. If you missed any of this stuff, you're going to need to rewind, okay, and make sure that you draw it in exactly like you see it here. Your page should pretty much look like mine when you're completely finished with part 1, right? If you're finished, okay, you can go ahead and click on the link for part 2 and then continue from there.